So today is the day. I'm gonna try to get this mounted up on the roof. And again, this is a rooftop camper. It's a wedge top, so it opens up at this end and then it hinges down here. So my goal is to mount that solar panel down here on the end where it hinges here. Probably a little inset this way so that the air dam kind of functions to push the air up over the top of the solar panel so I don't get as much air as I'm traveling down the road kind of under the solar panel. We'll talk about that gap in just a second, but this is kind of where it's going to go. My intent is to use the 80/20 rails and maybe fabricate some kind of plate like this, but we'll get to that in a second to kind of hold that up there. So this is the solar panel itself. I'm going to set you down for a second so I can flip that over. All right, so you can see the back side of this thing now. You can see the specs here. I already covered the specs previously. There's the wires that are already part of it. I do have a gland for the roof that I'll be using to get the wires from the outside to the inside, so it's a waterproof gland. But for now, we're gonna work on getting this mounted up there. The dimensions that I do know is I know from edge to edge at the very top, outside dimensions, I got 60 inches. So I have to go 60 inches. This solar panel itself is not quite 60 inches. So we're about 58.5 inches for the solar panel itself. So I did purchase this this mounting kit by Rich Solar, so I figure I will be able to get some ideas on best practices on how to mount this. And it came with kind of these Z brackets, and we'll look at that. I'm gonna put one of them over here. We can kind of see what that looks like. So normally the Z brackets, you know, they look like they're pictured there. If I grab a bolt. So normally you would mount that Z bracket like that. So you can see it's kind of bolted down on there. I put this is just some protective padding because I had this on the roof already with these feet on there. And I didn't want to scratch up the roof. So this is just some protective padding. But on the other side, you see the holes. So those are the holes. And then typically they just give you these screws that you just drill down into your roof. So I'm not going to be mounting it that way. But one of the things that I did see here is you can see that this mount has an offset. So there's a gap here. And that's important because solar panels, as they function and they work, the process of generating electricity from solar creates a lot of heat. And so underneath the backside of this panel is going to get kind of hot. And the temperature is going to rise up quite a bit. And as the temperature rises, these solar panels become less efficient. And so the idea is you want some offset here so that you have a gap for airflow. And then steady state air temperature, you know, is a little bit better than if you didn't have the gap. So you don't want to mount this directly to the roof so there's nothing here. You do want it to vent. And with these brackets, I do get a little extra dimension on the outside. It doesn't quite come out to the 60 inches that I needed. And in addition, this is not how I want to mount my brackets. I don't want to drive screws through it this way. So we're going to fabricate our own mount here. So I have some of this scrap angle iron around. This is 1 inch by 2 inches. And my plan is I'm going to take this angle iron, I'm going to mount this using the hole to drill some holes in here and give myself a little slot so that I can kind of set the distance outside dimensions so that it's 60 inches from this side to that side. And that'll match up outside dimensions to the roof there. And then if you notice, the height of this is slightly taller. So I'm maintaining my air gap here. And then we're going to fabricate a plate also that I can mount to this side. This isn't the exact plate, but we'll have some holes that I can mount to this bracket. And then the lower holes will mount to my 80/20 rail. Using this homemade mounting system, I should be able to get this mounted to my roof in a nice and secure way and maintain the air gap that I need. All right, so you gotta be careful here with the back side of these things. You can think of it as essentially glass. We don't wanna break this. Dimensionally, I'm just gonna see if I can achieve my 60 inches. I'm just gonna clamp this here. And this isn't touching the bottom, so it's not putting any pressure on the glass itself. But I have one here, and I have one on the other side over there, mounted just like that. And what I've done is I've mounted these up so they're flush right there. And let's see what we get. I think we're gonna be fine with this, but so I am slightly more, you can see here, slightly more than 60 inches, so about 60 1/4. So if I pull in about 1/8 of an inch on each side, I will achieve my 60 inches exactly. All right, so this will be one of the pieces here. This is a piece of scrap that I already had. It was exactly this long. I didn't have to cut it at all. I think it's gonna fit pretty nice. I'll be able to get 3 bolts in this thing so that it's kind of firm and secure. So what I'm gonna do is, I have another piece of this, and we'll see that over here. So I have a longer piece right here, same stuff. I'll just cut this to that dimension. Now, if you've never cut aluminum before, it's actually pretty easy to work with. I just use my normal woodworking tools most of the time. So my circular saw, I'll be able to make a cut through this thing with my circular saw and get it to be what I want. So this will be my cut station for today. I'm going to use my circular saw here on this first cut for this piece of material. That'll be pretty easy for me to cut through. I do have the circular saw plugged into the battery because I wanted to show that 3000 watt inverter will run this circular saw. So here's the circular saw. It's plugged into the battery pack. It's not on house. All right, I don't really have to measure much here. I want it to be exactly the same. And again, I had this piece of scrap. This was scrap already, so that's the dimensions. So we're going to use the same dimensions. I'm gonna line them up here and kind of use my marker and mark where that cut should be. And we can set this piece aside for now. So I know that that's my cut. So I'm just going to transfer this measurement to the back side here. Doesn't have to be exact. I'm just going to figure out where it is, about right there. Okay, so that's my cut line. Try to hold that and we'll get this cut through. Does cut through it pretty nice. I generally try to let the blade stop spinning before I remove it, just so I don't kick back this piece. And then I always keep a can of this around so I can clean off my workspace. So both of these sides, now that I've done the cut, they're pretty sharp. So I'm just gonna take a file and kind of get in there and make it a little more user-friendly. The nice thing about aluminum, it's really easy to work with. But I just took the sharp edges off so you're not cutting your fingers or cutting cables if it's going to wrap around any edge there. Do the same thing on all 4 of the corners here. So now we got our 2 angle irons cut. We have to mark these holes. And I'm just gonna eyeball them and try to center them a little bit here. So that's one, and then the other one, the other side's the same, so I don't need to go down there to do it. I'm gonna do it right here. Kind of center it and find out where that hole is. All right, so now that we got the position of the holes marked, we gotta figure out how far in we have to put that hole. And I'll probably put a little bit of a slot in there so we have some adjustability, but right now, this hole is centered about a 1/2 inch in. If you remember when I clamped this on and I had it flush mounted here, the outside dimension was 60¼ inches. So I had to move this in about 1/8 of an inch. And so I think if I go in 1/2 inch plus another 1/8 and center that hole there, that should give me the offset that I need. All right, so let's mark these up and just kind of roughly put in. All right, so I got my guidelines in there, and then I'm 1/2. So normally, if I were trying to match that hole, I'm 1/2 of an inch in, but I'm going to go another 1/8 inch deeper. All right, so I have my rough centers, and I'm going to reuse the bolts that came with that kit. So I'll reuse these bolts. I already picked the proper size drill for this. So I think this is probably soft enough. I don't need to punch it. Let's just see if we can drill through it. Make sure we got the hole. All right, so put the center of the hole where the mark was, went back and forth so I can elongate the hole. That gives me a little bit of wiggle room on each side. I'm gonna make them all like that and see where we land. Okay, so now we have our kind of slots in there. We can have a little adjustment inside now, and I've already kind of positioned this. I got this side here, we got the other side over there. And so now if I do a measurement outside to outside, so now we're spot on the 60. I have a little adjustment in there. So 60 inches is what I need outside to outside for the top here. And that's what that is. So we'll match it up. Now I just have to do my side plates. All right, let's visualize what we're gonna do next. So this is that bracket right there. So imagine that solar panel. We're gonna put this, flip it over, solar panel's on top, and we're gonna move it up to the roof here. So that's gonna be up there. Obviously it'll sit flat like that. So I want something to bolt to the 80/20. This is 1.5 inches thick 80/20. And then I got my aluminum composite roof. So that adds a little thickness in there. I don't think I want this riding exactly on the roof. Kind of want it maybe up a little bit. So give it a little gap there. I think that'll just keep the wear and tear down on my roof a little bit. So thinking something like this then. It's just a mock-up little piece. So here's my 80/20 spot right there, 1.5 inches. Get my holes in there for the 80/20. I got the composite roof, which is like thick blue line. I got a little gap in there, which is like orange, and then I got the green area, which is gonna mount to the back of that. So that's my goal. Not necessarily that width, but that's kind of the example of what we're trying to go for. All right, so here's what we had when we were out on the roof there. So we have the 80/20 rail, which is 1.5 inches thick. That's this rail right here. So if I put that on our aluminum sheet and line that up there with the back edge, that's our 80/20 rail. Then we have the thick blue line, which is the composite material, which is this same material here. So that's actually the roof. Right there's the roof. And then the next piece is we're gonna have the piece of aluminum which holds the solar panel. And so I got a line drawn here, which leaves just a little bit of a gap. You see the gap there, which is about twice one of these things. So I think that's where we're gonna cut, right along that line right there. So that'll leave us plenty of space to be able to mount, do a couple mount holes here, a couple mount holes here. I might get 2 of these per side. So cut this down to half, but that'll be our layout. just to help with this cut here. So there's not a lot of space on this side for me to hold this material when I'm running the circular saw through it. I'm gonna try to cut it with the circular saw here. So I put a couple of just screws in there so that as I'm pushing, this thing naturally wants to kind of stay up against there and I don't have to necessarily hold it down. It should kind of stay put on its own. Did a little shot here because I noticed my gap is a little big. So we're gonna bump this in, otherwise that piece is gonna fall down there and it might pinch the blade. Give it a little bit of support here. So we got a cut. All right, so we got 2 of these pieces cut. I got one I started to lay out the other lines on, but for now, all these edges are pretty sharp. So let's take a file and just file down all those edges. Then we'll start worrying about the other lines. All right, so where we are now is we have these pieces. We have 2 of these pieces here. And then our original kind of blueprint that we went from is this. So that's the thickness right there of the 80-20. And then at the very top, the other piece will get mounted at the very top. So we're spot on our design so far. Width-wise now, we had to figure out the width-wise. This was never set up for width. This thing is pretty beefy. It's meant to hold down some beefier stuff. I don't think we need that full width. All right, so I think I can get 3 of these brackets that we're making per piece. And so that's what my goal is. I'm gonna try to get those 3. I'm gonna use my jigsaw now and see if I can kind of cut on along those lines. All right, so I'm not sure how this jigsaw is gonna handle this thickness of material, but we'll give it a try. We'll run her slow so she doesn't clog, and then just getting through it. Just keep her going slow here. All right, so we made her through 1 slice. So I got 3 more cuts to do, then I'll have all the pieces. All right, so now we've got all our blank pieces. They're all roughly about the same size it's not bad for the tooling that we've used. And now it's time to get the holes in there. So again, 80-20 holes at the bottom, and then some holes to hold the angle bracket at the very top. So figure out the 80-20 holes first. All right, so for the layout of the 80-20 holes that are gonna go on the bottom, I already have this bracket. This is something I bought, so I'm just gonna use this as a template. The holes are 3/4 of an inch in from the side, so I'm gonna line it up on the bottom and then just kind of visually line it up and punch those holes on the top. So once I get them all punched, I will do a smaller drill first and then drill it out at the size that I need second. A couple of precautions here. So anytime you drill from a smaller hole to kind of a bigger hole on metal, at the very end it tends to grab the piece and it wants to twist it. And so take some precautions here. I'm wearing a cut level 3 glove, so if it does twist it in my hand, it's not gonna dig into my skin there. And in addition, I'm clamping this thing down, and in reality I'm holding this bigger piece, and if the drill wants to grab the smaller piece and spin it out of there, there's plenty of room for it to spin it out of there. I'm not going to get my hand caught in there. to grab. So that can get very dangerous. Once it's here, I'll just kind of turn this by hand and try to get it loosened up and break it free. Kind of drill out the rest almost just by hand. And now that it's free, I can kind of hold this and just kind of ream it out a little bit. So all the other holes are just like that, so when we're done, we'll come back. All right, so we've got all our blank pieces now. They're not so blank anymore. They have holes so we can attach to the 80-20. And the idea is I have some of these bolts that I have left over with the T-slot material, and here I've got 2 of them actually attached. And then these will, let's see if I can do this one-handed. Those will slide in there, and then we'll be able to tighten this down. And remember, this is oriented more like this. It's on the side. And the roof material is this aluminum composite material. So there's a sheet of aluminum on one side, aluminum on the other side, and so there's polyester in the middle. And that's really kind of here. Just kind of clamp that in and it won't stay. And then what we want to do is, this is going to be where our solar panel is attached to. And our solar panel is attached to this side. And so up against this rail, this is where I want to mount now the solar panel. And so we need 2 more screws on this side over here, and that's what we're going to line up next. Our next step is now to figure out where to drill the top holes. I've already got them in place, and what I've done is I've measured the rail it's going to connect to. So it's going to connect like this. This is where the solar panel is connected to, and then this is going to butt up to it right here, just like that. And so I just centered those holes in this rail. That is a 1-inch length side there. And so these holes then are just a 1/2 inch down from the top. And I put them in exactly aligned with the holes in the bottom. They won't be as big. I'm going to use a different set of bolts. So I'm going to use 10-24 3/4 inch bolts for that. And so that's what these look like. I won't need as big of holes for these, so I'll drill these out next. All right, so we got all of the top holes drilled, all the bottom holes drilled, and as the final step, I'm just kind of deburring the holes, the file here, both sides. So now we have made ourselves 6 brackets. I'm only going to use 4 for this project. The other 2 I'll just set aside for some other later project, but I have 6 right now. So these are the screws that'll fit the top. Next step is I'm going to pull the rails off of the solar panel and bring them over, and let's get the rails drilled, and we'll get those connected up and knocked out next. All right, I'm going to figure out where we're going to put these brackets. I grab a bracket, and I also have a rail in my hand. Let's go on over here and see the side here. So I want to put these solar panels again towards the front, because this will be it's a wedge top camper, and it'll open up, and this is the hinge side. And so this is the part where it'll be less weight. I still have to test and make sure my struts have enough push on them and the force to actually push up this extra weight. Otherwise I'll have to get some stronger struts. So I'm thinking that that's kind of where the solar panel will be mounted. I don't want to mount it all the way to the end, because I do want kind of the natural air dam that pushes air up. It'll skip over the top of the solar panel, hopefully, and then it won't get underneath. So that's what I'm hoping anyway. So I'm not going to mount it all the way to the end, just kind of mount it kind of that far. But I just want to see if there's any interference, and I didn't think there was, but I just wanted to confirm. So these brackets will be here. That piece will actually be up in the air, but there's no interference. So I should be able to mount anywhere I want on this bracket here. For best look, I think it's going to look best if I mount these towards the end of the rails. So, put one all the way down at the end on this end, and then one at that end. And that's the plan. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp this in place. So if I can do this one hand, clamp it in place, and then I'll use this as the template to drill out those holes in the rail underneath. I'm going to use this flat piece of plywood here. And We're going to line this up at the end down here. It's like that. I'm going to use a clamp to kind of clamp this in place here. And I'm going to use that to kind of as a pilot and drill out this hole. Place one of them in there just to hold it in place. Get that other hole started. Just kind of widen out those holes a little bit. Each of these pieces, they're not milled using a miller, so they're not exactly all the same. So if I add a little tolerance to the holes, then it's more likely that if I switch the brackets around, it'll still kind of work. So there's one side. Do the same thing with another bracket for the other side. All right, so we got them all done. Pop that last one out. Let's do a deep burring here. All right, so we've got all our pieces here. So the 1/4 inch thick aluminum bracket that mounts to the 80/20. We got a 10/24 3/4 inch screw, or bolt I should say. I'm putting a washer, I'm putting a lock washer, and a nut on this end. When I do the final assembly, I'll Loctite this. I don't want this to come up. So, but for now, just kind of putting it on. We're test fitting it.
So there's the other side. Same thing, washer, lock washer, and
Okay, so at this point, we've got kind of both brackets for the sides done. Remember where we started today? We had kind of the mismatch, but now here's our bracket for one side, here's the bracket for the other side. So we bring these on over to the solar panel again, and see if we can get this in here. There we go, set you there. So I have my two brackets, one for one side, one for the other side. I'll set the other side over here. And here is the assembly of this. So these are slotted, so we have some room to move them in and out, and that way we can dial in our 60 inches outer dimension that we need. Okay, so there's that side right there, and if we take a look at it now, so this will match up to the 80/20, and we'll be able to mount that up on the roof now. Go ahead and assemble the other side.
everything's just kind of hand tightened as we make sure that this all fits. Okay.
So I'm down here on the tailgate side. I'm just kind of want to see what this looks like up here. Normally, like I said, this is going to be mounted down there, but we got the mounting brackets on the sides, and they're doing what we thought. So it's spread out enough. It's giving me a 60 inches. So this part's hanging off here. That'll mount to the 80/20. This will actually be up about this high, but for now it's just kind of sitting down, just kind of seeing what it's going to look like here. So this is going to be pretty good. I think it's going to mount nicely. Same thing on this side. Looking like that. So next step is I'm going to pull these brackets off. I think I'm going to paint these black, and we'll do that next. Rough them up and get them painted black. We're going to paint these black, but right now you can see there's a lot of shine on there. I got the marker on there. We'll come back through after this next process. We're going to rough this up first, and then we'll come back through it and clean it with some acetone. But first step is I'm just going to use my normal home sander, all right, and we'll rough this up. It'll end up with this kind of, I don't know if you can tell the difference, but see, it's kind of roughed up there. It kind of has a nice, almost brushed aluminum look, and I think that'll grab paint a lot easier and a lot better. And same thing with the rails. So we're gonna kind of use the same thing with the rails instead of kind of the shiny aluminum, kind of that brushed aluminum look. So that's what we're going for. Just gonna use my normal sander.
Get the edges too here. Plastic done. I see the plastic here. Get all the edges here again. To the inside.
All right, that's it for sanding. You can see all of the marker stuff is off, and it has that brushed aluminum look. Okay, so it looks like my battery died, and we missed part of the painting there. So I've already painted one side. You saw me kind of clean them with the denatured alcohol. Still probably could use a second coat on this side, but I want to get to the other side so that we get everything at least with one coat, and then we'll come back through and do one more later on. Yeah, so these all had a chance. Let's get the shiny sides towards me, I guess. Corners here. Okay, so get the 4 little brackets that connect to the 80/20. Go vertical. I'm going to go one more coat. This is you won't see this side. This is under the solar panel, but you will see this side here and that bottom edge. Maybe not that bottom edge. You'll see the for sure the side. So, anyways, I'm going to get one more coat on this rail. And we're never going to rust when we wear aluminum, but it's just kind of more aesthetic. I want it to look like we bought these, right? Okay. So I'll let that coat there dry, and then I think we're ready to assemble. I think I covered this in the video that the battery died, but I'm just using Rust-Oleum. It's a paint and primer together. It's for wood and metal, plastic, more. So anyways, I think with the roughed up surface, this should grab just fine. So that's what I put on. So I was able to get the solar panel at the position I wanted it to be. And that position is kind of determined by a couple of factors. First of all, I didn't want it butted up to the end. I kind of think that my current air dam situation is going to force air up, and I think it's going to flow over the top just naturally. So I think that's the direction of the air, and we'll see if that really is true. And then I also wanted to leave room for the roof flange. So this is the flange where we can waterproof around the outside of it, and the wires will enter the cab, and then they'll run down through, and then kind of run down through here into the battery bank, which will be down in there somewhere. But for now, I needed 2 hands to do this. I didn't record very much, but essentially the process of
getting this thing bolted on was I had to remove a corner gusset. So I had to remove this corner gusset here. I put T nuts in the back, 2 for this one and 2 for that one, and you slide them down. Now, as you're doing this yourself, you always want to work from this end, get this one in first. Once that one's in, get this one in second. Because sometimes what happens is you get a bad T-nut and you gotta slide everything off. And if you started here, you have to undo this one and undo that one to fix this one. So start down here, make sure this one's in, then this one, and then work your way back down. So at this point, I'm at the point where I'm ready to kind of just tighten all these down. And so I'm gonna do that off camera, but I'll tighten all of these down. I'll put my corner gusset back in, and then I think I'm gonna go for a little ride and see what the noise level is. So everything's buttoned up, tightened up, and it came out just like we had designed it a little bit, right? So we had the 80-20, connected 80-20. There's a little bit of a gap in there on this side. You can see the rail all the way through. I think I'm glad I painted it black, so it looks pretty nice. So anyways, next test is I want to see if these struts are strong enough to lift the top now with the solar panel on there. So to lift the top, it's pretty easy. I already undid this side. We'll undo the other side together. So I have a cotter pin just to make sure you're in the frame there. There you go. So I have a cotter pin just to make sure that these things stay up. Put the cotter pin back in there. And so both sides are now free. And now there's the solar panel. And let's go ahead and give her a lift. Let's see if she's able to stay up. All right, sorry about the framing and that. It was hard to do one-handed. But you can see the gas struts are holding the tent up. I'm not sure how it'll do in wind. I know when wind it used to just kind of stay up there, but maybe it's not quite strong enough now. Anyways, I think it's good enough for now. We'll leave those gas struts on, and if I ever have to get stronger ones, I can always order stronger ones. But tent is up, solar panels on. Next thing is, let's take her for a drive and see what she sounds like. All right, so I just got back from a test drive, and the wind noise is nothing different than what it was before, so I kind of feel like it's working like I thought, that the initial wind dam is pushing the air up and over, and I don't really get any additional noise. The next step is to drill a hole in the roof, which is always fun to do, right? And then kind of put the flange around there and seal it back up. So that way we can run the wires from the solar panel inside the camper. My intent is to kind of run them into this corner essentially, and then the wire will go in, kind of down under the mattress here, and then down into this area, which is kind of where the battery would be back here. So that's next. Got the stuff all already set up, laid out here for us. I got this weatherproof flange again. So nothing special about this flange, and what you just need to do is you need to seal it down to the base again, and I'm gonna use some Lexel to seal that. So drill the hole big enough so I can get the cables down through. Each cable will run through each of these little ports here, tighten them down so that they're waterproof, and then once we got that set where you want, Lexel, and make sure it's sealed up. That's the plan. Okay, so just prepping a little bit here for pushing this wire through. So this is the cable that I'll have to eventually cut to size and everything. But that's the corner. We're gonna route that cable down through, and it'll snake down along under the bed and then down here to kind of the battery pack area. So battery's gonna be up against that back wall. And what you kind of see in there is some of the panels. I just put the panels up Normally you could lay them flat up there, but I just want everything out of my way from that corner, and everything's just jammed off to the side. So we're gonna go outside and drill our hole. So we just need it big enough in this corner to get those cables through, and then we'll be able to then use them and hook them up into this. But for now, this is kind of where it's gonna happen. Those cables are gonna come out through there, and then the ends will snake around and we'll be able to connect them up and then tie these up someplace. We'll figure out that later. So for now, I think a good spot, kind of in the middle of this area right here. So maybe here, but right there, right in that little area. That's what we're thinking. Okay, here we go. All right, so there's the hole, and next thing we'll do is snake the cables up through there. All right, so we got the hole in there. This is the flange. These are the two ends that have to mate up, right? So this one is going to connect up here, and it's the black one. And of course, these are all wound together, so we'll just squeeze them apart a little bit here. I'm glad we're getting this on film. Of course, nothing's really on film anymore. But anyway, all right, so I separated out the red cable. This is the black cable. The black cable's connected up. This black cable then has to kind of go through this flange, and it's not tight right now, so we'll just kind of run it down through. So we'll run it through here, and I'm just going to pull this cable all the way out. So I got everything out except for the slack. We're gonna do the same thing with the red cable now. So I'm gonna hook it up to the solar panel. I'd love to be able to just run these through here, but I can't fit this in through this flange, so I'm stuck doing it this way. So same thing, take the, just make sure I don't have any knots in it. Unwind it. I'm sorry about all of this, but I need 3 hands. So run this through the flange, and we'll pull all the slack out of it. So once I have all the slack out, of course I cross the wire, so I can just undo it. Okay, so here we go. Once I have all the slack out, then I should be able to position the flange something like this. So we'll take these wires now, run them down through our hole. We won't need all this length, so we'll figure out once we get them in there where we can cut them off. At some point I'll probably try to find a rubber grommet or something for around the edge there. If anyone has any ideas, let me know. Okay, so we're getting closer. So those will be tucked under there, like that. And that's where it's going to go eventually. So we have to get a couple of things done here. It's a good time to tighten up these things. As you tighten them down, they make it waterproof. So they kind of collapse around the cable and water can't intrude.
There's one.
There's the second one. So push that up in there. This is where I want to eventually land. So next thing we get the Lexol. Get that under there and seal this thing up now. All right, so I think you're seeing what I'm seeing. Anyways, I got the Lexol up here, and every time I get caulk out, I always have to bring a rag because I'm gonna get it all over everywhere. So anyway, my goal is to get this kind of about in that position right there, and it feels like I'm gonna have to hold it for a little bit because the cables want to pull it and spin it around, unless I just don't really care if it ends up spun a little bit. But I want to get caulk underneath this flange all the way around it. And again, I'm using Lexel. It's an indoor-outdoor, sticks almost anything. It's kind of like they call it the caulk or the duct tape of caulk or something like that. So let's go ahead and
See what we can get. Oh, the fuck yeah, this is a little booger. Yeah, there we go.
I was gonna try to butter up kind of the backside, but seeing how tight everything is, I don't think that's gonna work. All right. Seating it really well. Okay, I can actually see Lexel coming off around all the edges, so I know I'm good on all the edges. So I'm just gonna apply a little pressure here and let this kind of seal up a little bit, and then I'm gonna maybe apply some just around the edge there and just see if I can make that a little prettier too. All right, so we have those cables coming through the roof there now, and they're kind of running down along the side over there. I've already trimmed these to the length that I want, but now we have to actually put the solar connectors on these cables. So I'm going to put you right here. You can see this. This process is pretty simple. I already started one of these. So these kits, they come with a flange here that you can put this on. This has a gasket, and as you tighten this down, this will make this waterproof. This is a crimp slash solder on piece that'll go into this end. And what you want to do is you want to be careful that the red one matches up with what you think that the red one should be. And it's going to go from male to female, back and forth. But here's my other connector. Again, this is the connector that's going to end up in my battery box. This is the red cable right here, and I want this red cable to be able to plug into this one. So I need to make sure that I have the connector end that looks like that. So that's how I'm doing it. I'm just making sure that I can connect this red up to this red. All right, my soldering gun's been going for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can put some solder in this little connection right here now. Just use a couple of tools to kind of hold this down a little bit. I don't really trust these crimps, so I just always try to add solder if I can. In this case, I think it's going to be a good deal. So I'm just going to heat the metal up first, give it a little bit of heat, tend to tip a little bit here. And at some point, once the thing is hot enough, it just kind of sucks the solder right in there and kind of fills that void up a little bit. So just kind of make it more than just a little bit of a crimp on. We'll just add a little bit of solder to that one. Okay, so let that one cool. And once this is cooled, I should be able to push on, and I can feel the solder all the way down in there. I'll be able to push on the other tip. Since this is plastic, I'm not going to push that on yet. I kind of want to wait till this thing totally cools. But we'll start the other side. Try not to touch these together. This is a live solar panel right now, so I just don't want to really test the short circuit current. It has a spec on it, and we know what it should be, but there's no need to kind of go there. Put a little weight on that one so it doesn't go over and touch. And we're going to do the same thing. So I have all the pieces right here. We're going to thread on the piece that will eventually seal it up. These have a direction too, so you want to be careful to make sure you get the direction. Twist those fibers or together a little bit. Let's put this piece on there. The crimp portion here. Again, I'm not really relying on this crimp, so I don't have a crimper. Just using my pliers for now. Okay, so that'll hold it in place while I get some solder in there. Same process again, we'll heat this up. So that should be good enough. Let that cool down. I'm done with the soldering iron. I can unplug it and get it out of the way. All right, what's left here then is to push on these end pieces and then screw them on. So the red one, this is the red one. And again, if you're uncertain, go ahead and get your cable and make sure that this is the red to a red attachment. So that's what that is. So that's the red piece. And that little piece that we soldered on just fits up in there. And then you can push down this thing that'll make it watertight when we tighten it down then. I'm not too worried about this end being watertight, by the way, because this is inside the truck. For the most part, it's pretty dry inside here. It's not 100% dry at this surface, and I don't really mind that because I've got the deck system in there. All right. Okay, so that's cool enough. Put that in there. Snaps in. That's nice. Start pushing these pieces back down. And tighten her on here. All right, so now we got the solar panel wired up. What I have now here is a jumper. Well, I guess this is a converter. So it converts from the solar power ends. So again, I should be able to go black to black. It should snap in there, red to red, or positive to positive, I guess. All right, so now this is my SAE connector that will plug into my battery box. And then I can charge my battery through solar. All right, so have a lot of straightening up to do, all that mattress stuff and all those panels. They actually go all up there. I'm just kind of waiting for that to dry totally before I start moving around those cables, because every time I push on those cables it moves the outer box. I'm just trying not to touch those cables for now. But what I did do is I moved the battery into the back of the truck. Now this isn't where it will be positioned in the long run. In the long run it'll be positioned more towards the front, up against the front side. So running off this power pack, I've got a light, and it's called a light over there. I'm charging my phone when it's plugged in. I'm charging some microphone stuff. So if I come around to the other side, what we see now is we have a power cord from the house coming in, and it's actually charging the battery right now. So that's plugged into there. I also have the solar cables. Again, the solar comes down from here, positive and negative. They actually go into this SAE connector. Right now, as you can tell, it's kind of dusky out. I got some voltage on the panel. It's just not enough there to push any current right now, so I'll have to test that in the morning. But anyways, the connector, because it's connected up, when I use the Victron Connect application, I can see the panel voltage. So I can see that there's some voltage. I can see it's not enough really to do any charging. So that's where we're at for tonight. I can't do anything else with that. But this is kind of where it'll be. It'll be back here. My goal is this thing will kind of come in here this way, and I'll have access to the on-off switch here